The next person who's going to speak is Kim Fraczek from Sane Energy. And Sane Energy is a political organization that is working in New York State. And I want to say to anyone here, if you get a chance to work with Sane Energy, you really should. You really should. Both because you'll be doing good work for the community, but also because the people at Sane Energy are just really awesome. So let me get up your presentation here. So, have the remote here? Oh, here's your remote.
There's the remote. Okay. Oh, where is it?
Here it is.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah. Well, I feel so humbled to be here with, everybody who's spoken so far. You guys are incredible, and thank you for sharing this space with us. And I'm so in awe of how every single person who has been here has been talking about connecting the dots to all of the struggles, and it's very moving, yeah, so I have some notes here I'm gonna look at, so just keep looking at the slideshow, look at me. But I started out with a note to myself to say tonight is about connecting the dots, and I feel like every single person has achieved that in this room, and I feel like we all really understand how those the logic of extraction doesn't just show up in fossil fuels, which is what the Energy Project has been formed to fight. It shows up in policing and displacement and corporate power and sacrifice zones, and the idea that some communities are disposable for someone else's profit. And these images that are up here on this sort of represents some of the things that shaped my political understanding. The Move family, Seth Tabachman's work really connected the art and resistance and our fights here in North Brooklyn against the LNG facility that plagues our community. Just very, we are really in the neighborhood of that. And tonight is about understanding those systems and understanding that people can organize and stop them. Woo! So, okay, what we're going to cover tonight is we're going to move from the big picture to the practical. So we're going to talk about recognizing those systems of extraction, how extraction shows up. We'll do a little Energy 101. Who pays the price? Infrastructure traps, manufactured dependence, and resistance in energy democracy. And we're also going to learn a little American Sign Language. Woo! And we'll get you guys all moving and it's going to be very participatory as well. And the goal in this presentation is not to make everybody an energy expert tonight, right? We just want to help you understand how these systems work well enough so we can fight back. Okay. Okay, so recognizing systems. So this is my sort of personal story. This little weekend. I want to start personally because none of us arrive at this work out of nowhere, right? In 1985, my family moved from Erie, Pennsylvania to outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I was 10, going into 5th grade, and a new kid arriving in Philadelphia, I saw the move bombing on television. So what I saw as a 10-year-old over and over again was a picture of the fire burning, and I saw Ramona Africa getting arrested over and over again. And then the network news just kept displaying this event over and over again. I was 10, so I thought, oh my God, this lady set fire to her house and her children were the same age as me, and I was like, all these kids died in that fire, and it was just something that you kept seeing over and over again. Then years later, I got into punk rock, as good child does. And I found Seth Tabachman's book, You Don't Have to Fuck People Over to Survive, in a record store that was very similar to a space like this in Philadelphia, or outside of Philadelphia in the suburbs. And it completely changed how I understood art and politics, and it showed me that comics could document real struggle and real systems. And then in the early 90s, I was at a space in Philadelphia, very similar to a space just like this in West Philadelphia called the A Space, and it's still around today. But members of the Africa family came there and spoke at an event very similar to this. We were all just sitting around and listening to stories, and I was able to hear what happened to them from their perspective and not from the version that was told to me by the state and by the network news. And it was one of those moments that was very aha for me. It was like, I remember being 10 just 7 years ago, and I had a very different perspective on what was happening and what I am hearing today. At the time, I was hanging out in West Philly and going to punk shows. I was definitely getting introduced to anarchist organizing and things like herbal medicine, alternative ways of living, and thinking about the earth not just as a resource to dominate, but as something alive and interconnected. And that combination really shaped how I understand energy justice today. So, state violence to extractive economies. So when we talk about extraction, we're not just talking about drilling. We're talking about systems that treat land, water, labor, and entire communities as expendable. And that same logic justifies environmental racism and also justifies policing and prisons and displacement and sacrifice zones. Yes, this is the analog, not the analog technology not working out for me. So fossil fuel infrastructure gets concentrated, right, in communities with the least political power. Corporate profit, while communities absorb the risk, the pollution, and the health impacts. This is all connected. People that I grew up with in Pennsylvania, I went to high school with guys that now work in the fracking industry. Their children can't bathe in the water that comes out of their tap. They can't drink the water that comes out of their tap. They're in the middle of the mountains in Pennsylvania, have zero political power, and the history of Pennsylvania is very different than the history of New York, with extraction at the core of its system of governance. So I'm just going to move us into a little interaction here. We've all been sitting for a while, so we're going to take a little poll, but it's not scary. It's just putting your hands up. Okay, so first question. Have your utility bills gone up in the past 2 years? So if you're, say, yes, hold up a number 1, a little bit, hold up a number 2, 3, no, or 4, I have no idea. Just what your personal experience is.
We don't have a bill.
Okay, so if you don't have a bill, yeah, no, like not everybody has a utility bill. Sometimes landlords pay to heat hot water, whatever.
But it's all
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot of, what I'm just trying to get a survey of is there's a lot of ones in the room, okay? And there's a lot of, I'm not sure, I have no idea. I don't look at, some people are like, I don't even look at my utility bill, or there's a lot of different,
the highest bills in the United States. In the Virgin.
So who do you think has the most influence over your utility rates? Do you think it's your utility company, put a 1 up, government agencies, put a 2 up, elected officials, put a 3 up, or I'm not sure, put a 4 up?
Utilities.
Okay, I see some 4s, which is good, because you're going to learn, you're going to be a different number when you walk out of this room today. Okay. Cool, okay. So, if we were to focus on what should make a healthy energy system, would you say lower utility bills, stop fossil fuel expansion, invest in clean energy, more public control over energy systems, or all of the above? I hope I see everybody with 5. They're all connected. Lower utility bills is the same. So I'm going to show you a video now about with my dear friend Monique, who is from Shinnecock Nation, works at Long Island Progressive Coalition out on the eastern end of Long Island. And this is just like an impact of how, a lot of times when we have conversations about energy, they become very abstract. Markets, infrastructure, megawatts, but energy is survival. If you can't refrigerate your medicine, cook your food, charge a phone, heat your home, or keep the lights on, that impacts every part of your life. So when we say energy should be treated as a human right, this is what we mean.
My utility story. I have a son that I had at 17 years old. I raised him in an intergenerational family home. All throughout my life, my utilities were shut off, on and off and on and off. Just like the 2,000 plus people who are shut off right now from the utilities with PSE&G and National Grid in October. But the worst and longest time was when my son was 5 years old and my elderly grandfather was 70 years old suffering with kidney failure. Our utilities were shut off in the hottest days of August, all the way through the coldest days of February. We were not able to turn our utilities back on until my grandfather was forced into a predatory reverse mortgage of our home. 9 months of misery, and the utility companies did not care. The whole time I was afraid my son's teachers would find out and take them away from me. I was afraid my grandfather would not be able to bear the extreme temperatures. Our house was a complete icebox, and if not for family, we would have froze to death in that house. I thought this was my personal failure, but it was not.
Right.
This was and is the failure of our government not protecting us. So in my whole heart and soul, I say, HOCO, protect our families from predatory utility rate structure, protect our families from poor indoor air quality. Get us OPS now and sign the repeal of the 100-foot rule today. Our families, livelihoods, and health depend on it.
So that's Monique. She's amazing. I work with her nearly every day. Long Island is also National Grid territory, which you'll learn a little bit more about as we progress in this presentation. And yeah, I always feel like it's important to connect the real stories of people to like the energy jargon that we sometimes talk about when we say energy is a human right. You can understand, like, we all got up today and used energy and we used water to start our day to become productive members of our society, right? These are things that we need in order to participate. And just remember, it's not your fault. Like, this is not an individual failure. So these are just some facts I wanted to pull up from our comptroller's office. This is just this year. Over 1.3 million New York utility customers are over 2 months behind on their bills. And that concentration is in New York City and Long Island. National Grid Long Island has 47,000 customers behind on their bills right now today. National Grid New York City, they have 2 separate companies for Long Island and New York City. You'll learn a little bit more. Well, now you know. Queens, Brooklyn, and Staten Island, half of Queens is divided between National Grid and Con Ed. But they have 260,000 customers behind on their bills right now today. And AARP, I work with them quite often on utility rate hikes, which you'll learn a little bit more about. Many of their residents are cutting back on essentials or facing shutoffs. So they may spend less money on groceries or, and that's not good for your health, right? And that's not good for your nervous system and all of the things. And the Future of Heat Initiative, these are a really cool group of folks that used to work at utility regulatory agencies around the country, and now they were like, you know what our problem is? We need to get the fuck off gas. And so they started the whole thing about the future of heat, and they published a lot of really good studies saying that gas is locking us into high heating and high electric bills. And they are also blocking alternatives because they have, a stranglehold on our market. So I want to teach you a little bit about where our energy comes from, like from the source to the socket. And we're going to also learn a little American Sign Language, because once you get it in your body, you remember it. It's easier. So we're going to start with extraction. So it's putting your hands in a V and starting in and pulling them out. So extraction, say it with me. Extraction. Okay. Next is generation. Generation. Okay. Transmission is putting your two fingers together like this and doing the wires, transmission wires. Okay. Distribution is putting your hands together and then spreading them out. Distribution. And then what do we do with energy? We use it. So use is you put one arm up and then you spiral two fingers like this. So say use while you do it. Use, right? And then there's waste. And that is making, opening your hand up to you, putting another hand here, and flicking off waste. Say waste. Okay, cool. Good job, everybody. Okay. So, extraction is, there's different ways of extracting. There's drilling, which is fracking for oil and gas. There's also mining for coal and mining for uranium to heat up in nuclear power plants. So when people tell you nuclear is clean, they're lying. They're not taking into consideration the full life cycle of this kind of energy. And then when you mine the stuff, basically what generation is burning something or heating something up in order to boil water to create steam to turn a turbine. That's really what it all comes down to, is turning a turbine, right? So you burn gas or oil, and that boils water, creates steam, and turns a turbine inside a power plant. Nuclear is you're splitting uranium in order to create heat, which boils water and then turns a turbine. And then that gets too hot, so you need to usually put them by sources of water like rivers or streams, and then like a lot of nuclear plants will pull in the water from the lake and stream to cool off the burning of uranium that's happening. So and then there's also generation. There's another kind of turbine, which is a wind turbine, which doesn't need to burn anything. It just turns in the wind. You don't need to boil water and create all this waste. And then there's also capturing water motion to turn a turbine. And then there's also another kind of generation, which is using solar. So that's like basically capturing sunlight inside a solar cell to create electricity to push out into the wires. So there's a lot of different kinds of generation. There's also other kinds of generation. There's geothermal. There's a lot of stuff going, a lot of stuff. And then after you generate all this electricity, you need to move it somewhere. So we've all driven down, highways and seen these large transmission lines, right? This is very, very high voltage, very dangerous, but this takes high voltage and travels it across very far distances, like across the country, sometimes a lot of stuff like across hundreds of miles. And then there's also transmission to move gas and oil directly from the drilling and fracking. So that's transmission pipelines. Those are really large pipelines that move gas and oil long distances, like the Dakota Access Pipeline or the Keystone XL Pipeline, some of the Line 3 and Line 5s that are up in Michigan. And then there's also distribution. So this basically takes the transmission and steps it down in voltage if it's electricity, or steps it down in smaller pipelines if it's gas, and that goes directly to your house. And then we use it, okay? So we use it to create electricity to power our lights and our appliances, and then we also use it to heat our home in furnaces, or cook in our kitchen, on our kitchen stove. So that's distribution and use. So we also have to take into consideration part of the recipe of creating energy is waste and loss, okay? So looking at this, what is, like, when you extract for gas or oil or nuclear, you're actually only using 33% of the energy that is created from all that mining and all that transmission. 67% lost through transmission or burning or waste or things like that. It creates a lot of toxic waste and pollutants. Now, if you look over on renewables, the sun, wind, geothermal, hydro, it's 95% useful. So would we rather pay $5 for $1 of energy or 50 cents for $1 of energy? You know, it's sort of like there's a lot more useful energy within renewables, because if it does, you know, if the turbine is turning in a wind turbine and it's not producing any waste, it's just, you know, if it doesn't get used, it's just the wind and it's blowing. So, you know, I also want to point out that, you know, all energy sources have some sort of environmental impacts. I'm not claiming that like solar and wind don't have environmental impacts at all, but just wanted to put the basics out there forever. Remember, we're not going to be experts tonight. We're just learning the basics. So let's do it again. So, okay, 2 prongs. Extraction. Say it with me. Extraction. Generation. Transmission. Distribution. Use. And waste. Good job, everyone. Okay. So now you know a little bit of American Sign Language. Now I want to talk a little bit about our energy bills. So this is what many of us, not everybody, but many of us get. Hang on, let me find out where we are here. Where am I? Piece of frame. What's on your bill? Here we go. So when people look at their utility bills, they usually assume the cost of energy itself is what the biggest expense is. But often delivery charges, the pipes, the infrastructure, the maintenance, the expansion projects are actually much bigger cost on your energy bill. So supply on the right is the energy, okay? And then delivery is the system that's built around it. So utility companies make money by expanding infrastructure. So they're incentivized to build more pipes and wires. This is one of my energy bills. So I just wanted to point out what an actual grid national grid bill looks like. And I also wanted to just bring in Jabba the Hutt, because that is exactly what National Grid is.
In the 1800s, New York City used to light its streets with gas lanterns. As the population grew, so did the number of gas companies looking to corner the market. And since these companies were unregulated, they battled for turf in the streets of Manhattan. These guys who fought these wars were called the gas house gangs. The invention of the incandescent bulb in 1879, which marked the dawn of the electric era, changed everything. Gas and electric suppliers competed head to head. To make sense of a growing, increasingly complex grid, utilities were granted monopoly status in order to streamline energy delivery, to prevent companies from dueling over control of the grid, and to avoid duplicative, overlapping infrastructure. What a mess that would be. In exchange for being granted special monopoly status, every utility in New York State is regulated, in most cases by the Public Service Commission. So the Public Service Commission regulates electric and gas companies, along with water and telecoms, in New York State, and they are in charge of regulating prices of our energy. The corporate utilities have to ask the PSC for permission to raise prices to cover the cost of building and maintaining infrastructure. They also factor in a hefty guaranteed profit for their shareholders. This process of asking for money for development of infrastructure opens up a proceeding which is called a rate case. And the rate case process is designed to be very backroom and hidden from the public. Right now in New York State, some corporate utilities are asking to expand fossil fuel infrastructure without considering renewable alternatives and make us, the customers, pay for it. Given our climate goals in New York State and climate goals globally to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, this makes no sense. These are big corporations looking to do business as usual when our planet cries out for a rapid transition to renewable energy. Visit saneenergy.org/utilities to get active in keeping fossil fuels in the ground.
Okay, so National Grid, which is the local gas utility here in Brooklyn, in Staten Island, and half of Queens, and the entirety of Long Island, they are incentivized to keep us building gas pipelines, because that's what they do. So they manufacture dependence, and they use this rate hike proceeding to sort of like explain that they need it to keep us warm in our homes, and they really pour molasses on doing renewable energy projects, which they're mandated to do by laws that like some of the people I work with in this room really fought to make happen. So I just wanted to point out this graph here, the blue on the bottom, and I hate looking at graphs inside PowerPoint presentations, but this one in particular is really good. So the blue is the pipes that they build. This is National Grid numbers. If you notice, most of the blue is rising, and that's how much more money they've made that's how much more investments they've made in more pipelines. The red is the supply charge, which is like that. I can give you a whole other training on how supply is set, and that's not for this training. But the green is like the fees that go into a renewable energy fund. So you can see they're very small. So when you're hearing on the news a lot like that, oh, the climate law is what's driving our bills up, it's totally not. It is the gas pipelines that's driving our bills up. And we just got a rate increase of 11% on April 1st, and they are coming back for more in a couple of days. They were supposed to file in New York State on April 28th, but they're waiting because they're working in cahoots with our governor, who is currently in the process of breaking our climate law, so she doesn't have to face a lawsuit. She is super corrupt, and like I have cried every single day for the last 5 weeks because of this bitch. So, so anyway, the National Grid is coming back to ask for more money, and there is enough for all of their need, but not enough for all of National Grid's greed, right? So they would benefit from building the Williams pipeline. This was a pipeline that many people in this room helped to defeat in the years 2018, 2019, and 2020. Then Donald Trump came into office and said, nope, we want to build that pipeline that you all defeated. And I'm gonna hold the wind farms in New York State hostage, force the governor to do it. She just like immediately was like, yeah, no problem. Like, you don't even need to fight me. Yep, we'll push the pipeline through. So that's the red line over there. on the map there, that is going to destroy the Raritan Bay and the New York Harbor and the coast of Staten Island, Coney Island, Brighton Beach, the Rockaway Peninsula. It's pretty devastating. And the reason why the North Brooklyn pipeline was built in early 2017 started to be built was because they were anticipating this pipeline coming online. So now their new game in town is, well, okay, all the activists fought back in Brooklyn and defeated the North Brooklyn pipeline, so we're gonna take this new 2025 Williams pipeline and sell the gas to AI data centers, which don't even exist anymore. So the dystopia is just getting deeper and darker, and this is what this system feeds. So it is just that system of extraction just has to like feed itself more and more and more. So this is also one of the things, hey, there's Vinny. This is also one of the things that this is just a few blocks from here in North Brooklyn. And this is the largest fossil fuel facility in the entire state of New York. It's 120 acres of land, and it houses these two giant tanks. If you've ever driven over the Kosciuszko Bridge, you've probably seen them and been like, I have no idea what that is. That's just part of the industrial landscape. But when you stop and take a look, it's allowed to hide in an urban environment or an industrial land because people are just like, it's just part of the stuff that is in a city. So this is actually hyper refrigerating liquefied fracked gas. It's highly explosive. It is under the BQE. It is in the airline pathway of the LaGuardia Airport, and of course, what's built around it is a public housing complex for low-income people. I know Vinny grew up very close to there, and it's like we have been fighting this for 7 years. Our goal this year is to get a commitment from New York State to shut this down because they don't even use it. And the only reason we don't know that they don't use it is because we started digging into their paperwork. And we filed discovery questions. We are like nerding out over this stuff, and we are gonna shut them the fuck down. And we're gonna get a commitment to that this year. You know, every elected official in this whole area, from Nydia Velasquez down to like the local, city council people and community boards, they all want to see a shutdown too. So we're gonna fight really hard in this terrible political moment that we're in and win. Just want to frame who this company is. So they're not a local gas utility that's like struggling. They are a multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation. This is the CEO that just left. This is the new CEO that just came in at the end of 2025. She is a psychopath. She used to be the CEO at Shell and at Rio Tinto. And if any of you know about extractive companies in South and Central America, she was in charge of all that. Pardon?
And Nigeria.
And Nigeria. And, so anyway, they make $4,300 per hour. So by the time you walked in this door to the time you leave, they will be like something like $15,000 richer. And that is what we are also fighting. Hi, Jason.
Where is Zoe from?
She is from Australia. So I'm here to recruit you all as a good organizer would do. I'm going to ask you to take out your phones and scan that QR code and fill out that form because we want to keep you in the loop on all the awesome actions that we are going to take. Our goal is to get 50,000 comments this year, so that's one of the lowest lifts of things that you can do is make a comment. Once they file, I will have a comment prompt ready for you and teach you how to do that. We also have walking tours of the facility once a month. We have art builds once a month. And we also are going to have online Zoom teach-ins once a month. So they all start this weekend. So we have a walking tour, a bike tour, Zoom teach-in. We have a lot of, and we make our activities really fun. We try to bring a lot of art into everything that we do. We aren't like boring nerds. I mean, we are boring nerds, but we also make it fun to like get involved in. So that's sort of, that's sort of like, I would love to see you all again, and please come through. And if you scan that and fill that out, we will definitely be like, okay, you filled out that form, we're gonna get you to file a comment. And that's the first thing you can do. We know that like, once we get 10,000 comments, which is pretty, like with our organizing, it's easy for us to do that. That's when the commissioners start turning their heads, that's when the governor turns her head. We're going to pump it up to the level that it needs to be seen, and we're gonna try to get 50,000 comments this year, and I know we can do it. So that's oh, also Seth designed our logo. I'm so proud. We make t-shirts like that, and it's always like, I'm always like, I want a Seth Blackman t-shirt. Yeah, so that's my presentation, and thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you everybody for being here tonight. I'm going to present my artwork with the support of my band, Continuity of Struggle. We're going to take a couple minutes to set the mics up as they should be, and then I'm going to show some of my